Can you plant your seed inside me? The 60-year-old giant male order bride asked the lone rancher the sun had just begun to rise over the rolling plains of Exura 7, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and violet. A gentle wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying with it the faint scent of iron-rich soil. From a distance, the silhouette of the ranch stretched across the land, a modest cluster of buildings clinging to the edge of a world that humans had only begun to understand. At the far end of the property, near the edge of the cliff, overlooking the sprawling valley below, a young human named Leora stood with her hands clenched, staring down at the vastness that stretched before her. This was her first time leaving the safety of her ranch, the only home she had ever known, to journey into the unknown. Her heart thumped unevenly, not with fear alone, but with the strange mix of anticipation and resolve. She had always been curious, always been brave in her own way, but the galaxy was not forgiving. Every story she had read, every warning she had heard about explorers, came rushing back to her now, like a tide threatening to sweep her off her feet. Beside her, old rancher Cale adjusted the straps of her equipment pack. His hands were rough and calloused, a testament to years of work under the harsh sun of Exura 7. Yet his eyes held a gentleness, a quiet confidence that Leora had always admired. Cale had promised to guide her through her first journey beyond the ranch, to help her navigate the unfamiliar terrain of the distant plateau known as the Starfall Ridge. "You're ready," Cale said, his voice low and steady. He didn't try to hide the challenge ahead, but there was no doubt in his tone that he believed in her. "Your hands might shake, your legs might falter, but that's normal. First times always hurt a little. You'll find your strength as we go." Leora swallowed hard and nodded. The truth was, she had been dreaming about this moment for years. Every night she would sit by the small window of her cabin, staring at the distant lights in the sky, imagining herself among them. She imagined floating weightless in the blackness, seeing worlds untouched by human hands, touching landscapes that existed only in the dreams of those bold enough to explore. And now, at last, she had the chance to turn that dream into reality. The path ahead was narrow, carved into the edge of the cliff by those who had ventured here before. The wind tugged at their cloaks and pulled at their hair as they began their ascent, each step echoing against the rocks. Leora's chest tightened. She had trained for months, but nothing could have prepared her for the dizzying heights, the wild beauty of a world so raw and alive. She glanced at Cale, who walked calmly, almost effortlessly, as though he belonged to this untamed land. "You'll learn to move with it," Cale said, reading her expression. "The wind, the ground, even the light, it will all tell you how to step. You just have to listen." Leora focused on her breathing and tried to do just that. The wind tugged again, stronger this time, but she adjusted her stance and moved forward, one careful foot in front of the other. She felt her pulse slow slightly as she tuned herself to the rhythm of the cliff, to the whisper of the grass, the murmur of the stones beneath her boots. Hours passed, though they seemed like minutes. The plateau opened up before them, a vast expanse of jagged rocks, crystalline outcrops, and strange plants that shimmered under the sunlight. Some of them were tall and thin, twisting like spirals of glass, while others bloomed low to the ground, petals glowing faintly as if lit from within. Leora reached out to touch one, amazed at the smooth, cool surface. It hummed softly under her fingers, a vibration she could feel through her skin. "This is incredible," she whispered. Cale smiled. "Humans always find beauty where they go, Leora. That's part of why we survive." Curiosity, wonder, and the courage to step forward even when it hurts. Her stomach tightened. She had expected this journey to be a test of physical endurance, but it was just as much about mental strength, about patience and focus. Every step required attention, every movement carried consequence. One slip, one misjudged leap, and they could fall into the valleys below. And yet, despite the danger, there was a thrill that made her heart race with a sense of purpose she had never known. As they advanced further, Leora noticed the sky beginning to change. Wisps of iridescent clouds stretched across the horizon, colors she had never seen on Earth. The light played across the crystals of the plateau, scattering rainbows in patterns that shifted with every movement. For a moment she forgot her fear entirely, lost in the dazzling spectacle, feeling more alive than she had ever felt before. Suddenly, Cale raised a hand. Leora froze. Ahead of them was a narrow passage between two enormous crystal towers. Beyond it, the plateau continued, but the passage itself seemed treacherous, slick with an unfamiliar moss-like growth. One misstep could send them tumbling. "Careful here," Kale said. "It's the first challenge of many. Step lightly, place your weight evenly, and trust yourself." Leora's knees trembled. Her first instinct was to step back, to retreat to the safety of the familiar plains. But she remembered Kale's words about courage and curiosity. She took a deep breath, focusing on the crystals that glimmered under the sun, their surfaces warm and inviting. Slowly, carefully, she placed one foot in front of the other. She felt the moss give slightly, but it held. Another step. Another. She was moving, truly moving, across a world no human had yet conquered fully. Midway through the passage, she lost her balance for a heartbeat and her heart leapt into her throat. But Kale was there in an instant, steadying her with a firm hand. "You can do this," he said. "Every first time hurts a little. That's normal. You're stronger than you think." Her pulse slowed. She nodded and continued, each step gaining more confidence. By the time they emerged on the other side, Leora felt a surge of pride she could not contain. She had faced her fear and kept moving. She had begun to understand what it meant to be human in this vast, untamed galaxy, to step forward, to explore, to endure. The plateau beyond the crystal passage opened into a wide valley. Strange creatures grazed among the glowing plants, moving with an elegance that seemed almost deliberate, as if they were aware of the humans watching them. Leora crouched behind a rock, marveling at the beings. They were unlike anything from Earth, with long, flowing limbs and translucent skin that reflected the sunlight in waves of color. One of them lifted its head and gazed in their direction. For a long moment, Leora felt a strange connection, as though the creature recognized her curiosity and bravery. Then, with a graceful leap, it bounded away, disappearing into the distance. "They're peaceful," Kale said softly, "but cautious. That's how life survives out here." "Observes, learns, then moves forward," Leora smiled. The creatures reminded her of humanity itself, resilient, curious, and ever-learning. For the first time, she felt not just fear or anticipation, but a sense of belonging in this vast, alien world. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the plateau, Kale led them to a sheltered grove. The grove was filled with soft, glowing moss and strange, tall trees that bent slightly toward the center, forming a natural dome. It would be safe to rest here for the night. Leora set down her pack and sank to the ground, exhaustion washing over her, but it was a satisfying exhaustion. She had faced her fear, navigated the first obstacles, and learned more about herself than she had ever known. The journey had only just begun, and already she felt the thrill of human ingenuity and resilience. Kale settled beside her, unrolling a simple mat. "You'll sleep well tonight. Tomorrow we go further. And every step will teach you something new about this world and about yourself." Leora looked out over the valley as the first stars began to twinkle in the alien sky. Her heart was full, not of fear, but of anticipation. She had taken her first step into the unknown, and though it had been difficult, she had endured. She was human, and humans had a way of surviving and thriving where no one else could. For the first time in her life, she felt the unshakable truth. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders, and she was ready to meet it all. The first step had hurt, yes, but the journey promised so much more. And Leora smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning. The first light of dawn crept across the plateau, spilling golden streaks through the translucent branches of the grove. Leora woke to the soft hum of the moss beneath her, the faint vibration coursing through her body like a heartbeat of the world itself. She stretched, feeling the soreness of her muscles, yet also the strange thrill of accomplishment. Yesterday had been the first step into the unknown, and today promised the next chapter. Kale was already awake, tending to the small fire they had managed to coax from the dry crystal shards and moss. His movements were calm, deliberate, as though he were performing a ritual he had repeated many times. Leora watched him silently, appreciating the contrast between his steady confidence and her own tentative excitement. "Good morning," Kale said without looking up. "Sleep well." "I did," Leora admitted. "Though I dreamed of the plateau of the creatures, it felt alive." Kale chuckled. "It is alive. Everything here has a rhythm. You'll learn to feel it. The world isn't just something you walk across. It's something you listen to, something you respect." "It speaks if you know how." Leora nodded, trying to understand. Respect, rhythm, listening. These were not just words, they were a philosophy of survival, a way of moving through the galaxy with both caution and wonder. They broke their simple meal of dried fruits and protein cubes in silence, each lost in thought. Leora felt the weight of the pack on her back as they prepared to move again. Today, Kale promised, they would explore the heart of Starfall Ridge, a region where the plateau dipped into jagged valleys and strange phenomena had been reported by earlier explorers. Few humans had ventured there, and even fewer had returned with stories. The path ahead was not obvious. The terrain shifted constantly, rocks rising and falling like frozen waves, interspersed with glowing moss and translucent flora. Leora moved carefully, letting Kale lead the way. Every now and then a slight tremor ran through the ground, subtle but unnerving. "Those are quiver shakes," Kale explained when she asked. "The planet breathes. Some of its movements are deep within, far below what we can see. You'll feel them more as we go further." "Don't be afraid. They aren't dangerous if you respect the land." Leora swallowed hard but nodded. She had learned that fear was a natural companion to discovery. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. As they progressed, the landscape began to change. The air grew cooler, tinged with a metallic scent, and the sunlight fractured through thick, crystalline canopies above them. Shadows moved in strange patterns across the ground, and Leora could see faint glimmers that weren't reflections, small, fast creatures darting through the undergrowth, curious but cautious. They had long limbs and eyes that shone faintly in the dim light. For a moment, Leora felt that old thrill of awe mixed with a twinge of apprehension. "Don't startle them," Kale whispered, kneeling to observe a cluster of the creatures feeding on a glowing plant. "Curiosity is universal, but respect earns trust, even in alien life." Leora crouched beside him, holding her breath. The creatures froze, sensing her presence, then slowly returned to their activity. It was as though they had silently judged her and found her acceptable. A warmth of pride spread through her chest. Humans had always been observers, explorers. They had survived not by brute force alone, but by curiosity, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. Hours passed as they traversed narrow paths between towering rock formations and sparkling crystal spires. Leora grew stronger with each step, her confidence growing alongside her understanding of the terrain. Yet the deeper they went, the more challenging the path became. Rocks shifted underfoot, streams of iridescent liquid crossed their route, and occasionally the moss would ripple in subtle patterns, warning of instability ahead. At one point, they reached a narrow bridge of stone that spanned a deep crevasse. The drop below was dizzying, 100 meters of jagged rock and glowing moss. Leora's stomach churned at the sight, and her hands gripped the rough surface of the bridge. Kale walked ahead with calm assurance, demonstrating each careful step before signaling for her to follow. Leora placed one foot forward, then another, her muscles tight with concentration. Halfway across, a small tremor rattled the bridge. Her heart jumped and she froze. Kale's voice came from ahead, steady and commanding. "You are stronger than you think. Trust yourself, trust the bridge, trust the rhythm of the world." She exhaled slowly and focused. Step by step, she moved, feeling the subtle shifts in weight, listening to the vibrations beneath her feet. The moment she reached the other side, a rush of triumph surged through her. She had done it, not because the world had bent to her will, but because she had learned to move with it. Beyond the bridge, the plateau opened into a vast valley, unlike anything Leora had ever seen. Giant crystal formations jutted out of the ground like teeth, their surfaces refracting light into 1,000 colors. Strange plant life grew in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as though the planet itself had a sense of design. And in the distance she could see the faint outline of a structure, tall, angular, and unlike anything human-made. "Is that a building?" she asked, squinting. Kale nodded. "Something left by others, maybe explorers, maybe something older. Either way, we should investigate carefully. First contact, even with abandoned structures, can teach you more than walking for days." They descended into the valley cautiously. The ground was uneven, and the glowing moss made it difficult to judge depth. Leora's every sense was alert, ears listening to subtle sounds, eyes tracking shifting shadows, hands brushing along walls of crystal to guide her balance. The valley seemed alive, almost watching them, and a thrill ran through her veins. As they approached the structure, the air changed. It carried a faint electric charge, prickling their skin. Leora reached out and touched the surface of the building. The material was smooth, cool, and unlike anything she had felt before. It pulsed faintly under her fingers, responding to her touch. Kale observed, intrigued. The planet interacts with it. Maybe it was designed to respond to life, or maybe the planet itself has made it this way over centuries. Either way, it's remarkable. Inside, the structure was vast. High ceilings arched overhead, and walls glowed faintly with embedded crystals. Strange symbols were etched into the surfaces, geometric patterns that seemed both alien and familiar. Leora traced them with her fingers, feeling a strange resonance, as though the symbols carried a memory she could almost understand. "This is incredible," she whispered. "I never imagined anything like this exists." Kale smiled. "That's the human advantage. Our imagination, our curiosity, drives us into the unknown. We see possibilities where others see only danger." They explored further, discovering chambers filled with crystalline devices that hummed faintly, producing patterns of light and sound. Leora realized these might have been tools, or perhaps a form of communication, left by a civilization long gone. She marveled at the intelligence required to create such intricate structures, and at the sheer scale of the unknown. Hours passed, and Leora felt the exhaustion of both body and mind. The valley was beautiful but challenging, and the discoveries overwhelmed her senses. Yet she was exhilarated, more alive than ever. Humans had always faced the unknown, and she felt connected to that legacy, proud to continue it. As evening approached, they decided to make camp within a smaller chamber of the structure. The walls glowed softly, providing warmth and light. Leora sat against a smooth crystal, reflecting on the day's journey. She had navigated treacherous terrain, faced her fears on the bridge, and discovered a civilization older and more advanced than any human memory. Kale prepared their simple meal, glancing at her with a quiet smile. "You did well today. Every first time is difficult, but you've adapted. That's what makes humans remarkable. We take the unknown and turn it into experience, into knowledge." Leora nodded, feeling a swell of pride and wonder. She understood now that this was what her life on the ranch had prepared her for, not the work itself, but the mindset, the courage to step forward, to endure, and to explore. The galaxy was vast, and it could be dangerous, but it was also full of opportunity, and humans were meant to rise to it. As the stars appeared in the alien sky, visible even through the crystal ceilings, Leora felt a deep connection to the universe. She was small, but she mattered. Her first steps into the plateau had been just the beginning. Ahead lay mysteries, challenges, and wonders she could not yet imagine, but she knew one thing for certain: she was ready. And with that thought, Leora settled into a quiet sleep, the hum of the crystalline valley surrounding her, the first chapter of her adventure complete, and the promise of the next day shining bright in the alien starlight. Morning came slowly in the crystalline valley, the soft glow from the walls of the structure bathing Leora, and Kale in a serene light. Leora awoke to the faint hum of the crystals, a sound that had become almost comforting, like the heartbeat of this alien place. Her muscles ached from the long climb and exploration of the previous day, but the excitement in her chest more than compensated for the fatigue. Today, Kale promised, they would venture deeper into the heart of the structure, where the most intricate designs and strange devices awaited discovery. Kale was already awake, moving quietly as he prepared their modest breakfast of compacted protein cubes and fruit. His movements were deliberate and calm, in contrast to Leora's restless energy. She admired him more each day, not just for his knowledge, but for the patience and steady courage that seemed woven into the very fabric of him. "Ready for the next step?" Kale asked, his eyes scanning the glowing walls. "This part will test both your mind and your body, but I think you're ready," Leora nodded. "I want to see everything. I want to understand it." Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. The unknown had always called to her, and now she was finally answering that call. They stepped carefully into a long corridor, its floor smooth but uneven, embedded with crystals that pulsed faintly under their feet. Strange symbols lined the walls, geometric shapes that seemed almost alive. Leora reached out to touch them, feeling a slight vibration as her fingers passed over the carvings. Each symbol seemed to respond differently to her touch, as if recognizing her presence. Kale followed, observing silently. "These could be a form of communication," he said softly. "Or maybe they are a record of events. Either way, they show intelligence, logic, and creativity. That's something humans understand instinctively." The deeper they went, the more the air shifted. It became cooler, tinged with an electric charge that made Leora's hair stand on end. She could feel it in her fingertips, a subtle hum that resonated through her bones. The structure seemed to respond to their movement, or perhaps it had always been alive in its own way. Either way, it was mesmerizing, demanding attention and respect. At a junction in the corridor, they found a doorway that led into a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched high above them, supported by crystalline pillars that refracted light in endless patterns. At the center of the room stood a device unlike anything Leora had ever seen. It was tall, circular, and covered in intricate carvings that pulsed faintly with a blue glow. Lines of light ran across the floor, connecting the device to the walls, forming a network of luminous pathways. "What is that?" Leora whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Cale approached cautiously, examining the device. "It looks like some kind of interface," he said. "Perhaps a control system or a recorder. We won't know until we investigate carefully." Leora felt a surge of excitement. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the first time she would touch something completely alien, something no human had fully understood. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached toward the device, hesitant but eager. As her fingers brushed the surface, the carvings responded, glowing brighter and sending faint pulses through her hands. Leora felt a strange connection, a flow of energy that seemed to travel along the lines of light across the floor. She gasped softly, and Cale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Focus," he said. "Let it guide you, observe before acting." That's how humans survive and thrive in the unknown. Leora took a deep breath and concentrated. The energy pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. She realized it responded to thought and intention, not just touch. Tentatively, she moved her fingers in a pattern she had seen in the symbols along the walls. The light flowed along the pathways, and the device responded with a low hum that grew steadily louder. Suddenly, a holographic projection filled the chamber. Images appeared in the air, three-dimensional and glowing. They depicted landscapes, creatures, and structures, moving as though telling a story. Leora's eyes widened in awe. The device was a recorder, a keeper of memories, or perhaps knowledge from the civilization that had built this place. Cale watched closely, nodding with approval. "You've activated it. Incredible." Humans have always sought knowledge, and here you are, accessing the thoughts of beings from a world beyond our own. The holographic images shifted, showing a sequence of events. The construction of vast cities, interactions with creatures Leora did not recognize, and experiments with the glowing plants and crystals that littered the plateau. The civilization had been advanced, highly intelligent, and deeply connected to the planet itself. "This is amazing," Leora whispered. "They understood this world in ways we can only imagine," Cale smiled. "And now so do we. That's the gift of curiosity and courage. Humans have always reached beyond what's comfortable. That's why we survive." They spent hours studying the holographic display, learning about the alien civilization's technology, their understanding of energy, and their symbiotic relationship with the planet. Leora felt a growing sense of respect and humility. These beings had achieved remarkable things, yet the human spirit was no less capable. Humans had survived and thrived in countless environments, and with knowledge and courage, they could continue to do so. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Leora noticed a small passage at the far end, partially hidden behind a crystalline wall. It seemed less stable, more mysterious, and she felt an irresistible pull toward it. "Cale," she said, pointing toward the passage. "I think there's more. I want to see what's inside." Cale examined the wall carefully. "It looks safe enough, but be careful. Curiosity drives us forward, but caution keeps us alive." Together, they entered the hidden passage. The air grew cooler, the light dimmer, and the hum of the crystals more pronounced. The walls were covered with intricate carvings, depicting events that seemed almost ceremonial. Leora ran her fingers along the patterns, feeling a strange warmth, as if the carvings carried the memory of those who had touched them before. At the end of the passage, they discovered a small chamber unlike the others. The ceiling was low, and the space was filled with soft, glowing flora. In the center stood a pedestal, and atop it rested a small, crystalline sphere. It pulsed with a gentle light, almost like a heartbeat. Leora approached slowly. The sphere seemed to respond to her presence, glowing brighter as she moved closer. She hesitated for a moment, then reached out to touch it. The moment her fingers made contact, a wave of images and sensations flooded her mind. She saw landscapes, creatures, and events, all tied to the planet and its energy. She understood, in a way that was both physical and emotional, the deep connection between the civilization and Exura 7 itself. Kale observed silently, recognizing the intensity of the experience. "It's a memory sphere," he said softly. "It records not just information, but understanding. It's a way of communicating directly with consciousness." Leora gasped, overwhelmed by the depth of knowledge flowing through her. The civilization had achieved a level of understanding humans could only aspire to, yet there was also a lesson in their connection to their environment, a reminder that survival was not just about technology, but about harmony, awareness, and respect. She withdrew her hands slowly, the images fading but leaving a profound impression on her mind. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "They lived in balance with their world. We can learn from this." Kale nodded. "And we will. Humans adapt, learn, and carry knowledge forward. That's our strength." As they explored the chamber further, Leora noticed faint markings on the walls indicating paths deeper into the structure. Her heart raced with anticipation. There were more mysteries to uncover, more lessons to learn. She felt a surge of pride in herself and humanity. Despite fear, despite uncertainty, they were moving forward, uncovering secrets that no one else had dared approach. Hours passed as they mapped the chamber and documented the holographic displays and crystalline devices. Leora's mind raced with possibilities. How could humans use this knowledge? How could it help them understand alien worlds and survive in the galaxy? Every discovery felt like a victory, a reminder that human curiosity and resilience were unparalleled. As evening approached, they found a safe corner to rest. The soft glow of the crystals bathed the chamber in soothing light, and the hum of energy seemed almost like a lullaby. Leora leaned against Kale, exhausted but exhilarated. Today had been difficult, but it had been extraordinary. "You did well today," Kale said, his voice gentle. "You faced the unknown, learned from it, and adapted. That's what humans do. That's why we thrive." Leora smiled, feeling a deep sense of purpose. She had taken her first real step into understanding this alien civilization, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries, and humans were uniquely equipped to explore it. As the stars outside began to twinkle, visible even through the crystalline ceiling, Leora closed her eyes, letting the hum of the chamber lull her into sleep. She dreamed not of fear, but of discovery, of the endless possibilities that awaited those brave enough to seek them. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but she was ready. Humans had always faced the unknown and always triumphed. And with that thought, Leora drifted into a deep, contented sleep, the pulse of the crystalline valley echoing through her dreams, promising that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new wonders, and new triumphs. The first light of morning filtered through the crystalline walls, scattering rainbows across the chamber where Leora and Kale had spent the night. The hum of the memory sphere echoed softly in the background, as if the structure itself was alive, aware of their presence. Leora stirred, stretching her muscles and feeling the familiar ache that came from the previous day's exploration. Despite the fatigue, a sense of exhilaration thrummed through her veins. Each day brought new discoveries, new lessons, and new challenges, but today she could sense that something different awaited them. Kale was already awake, moving quietly among the glowing flora, checking their supplies and adjusting their gear. His calm presence was reassuring, a steady anchor in the midst of the unknown. Leora watched him for a moment before speaking. "Do you think there's more to this place?" she asked softly, her eyes tracing the patterns of light on the walls. Kale looked up, a faint smile on his face. "Always, every structure, every system, every world has more to reveal. That's why humans explore. We don't settle for what's in front of us. We push forward step by step until we understand, or at least we try." Leora nodded, feeling a surge of determination. She had already touched the memory sphere, experienced glimpses of a civilization older and more advanced than anything humans had yet achieved. Yet, as Kale reminded her, understanding was never complete. There were always deeper layers, hidden challenges, and lessons waiting to be discovered. They left the chamber and followed the faint markings along the crystalline floor, leading them toward a series of twisting corridors that descended deeper into the structure. The air grew cooler, tinged with an electric charge that made Leora's skin tingle. The corridors narrowed, forcing them to move single file, and the hum of the crystals grew louder, almost insistent. At one point, they came to a section of the floor that was fractured and uneven. Thin gaps ran between the crystals, and faint pulses of light glowed from the depths below. Leora hesitated, her stomach tightening at the sight. Cale noticed and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Remember what I told you," he said gently. "Fear is natural. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the choice to act despite it. Focus on your steps and let the rhythm of the world guide you." Leora took a deep breath and began to move forward. Each step required careful attention, her eyes scanning for weak spots, her hands brushing against the walls for balance. A sudden quiver ran through the floor and she froze, her heart leaping into her throat, but Cale's calm voice guided her. "You can do this," he said. "Step lightly, trust yourself, and keep moving." She nodded, exhaling slowly, and continued. Step by step, she crossed the fractured floor, learning to synchronize with the subtle vibrations beneath her feet. When she reached the other side, a rush of triumph surged through her. She had faced danger and emerged unscathed, not because the world had yielded, but because she had adapted. Beyond the fractured floor, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. This room was unlike any they had seen before. Towering crystalline spires rose from the floor, forming a maze of light and shadow. The air was thick with energy, and the hum of the crystals vibrated in their chests. Leora felt an almost magnetic pull, as if the chamber itself was drawing them forward. As they advanced, the floor beneath them shifted suddenly. A section of the crystal pathway tilted, sending Leora stumbling. Cale caught her quickly, steadying her with a firm grip. "Watch the energy patterns," he said. "This place responds to motion and presence. Predict the shifts and you'll move safely." Leora focused, observing the subtle fluctuations in light and vibration. Slowly, she began to anticipate the movements of the crystals, adjusting her steps and balance. It was like learning a new language, one of rhythm, intuition, and observation. She moved with growing confidence, realizing that humans had an advantage here: adaptability. They could observe, learn, and apply knowledge in ways that other species might not. Hours passed as they navigated the spire chamber, the path becoming more complex with every turn. At one point, they encountered a series of suspended platforms, floating slightly above the ground and connected by narrow crystalline bridges. The platforms shifted unpredictably, rising and lowering in response to their weight. Leora's heart raced as she stepped onto the first platform. Cale moved alongside her, demonstrating how to time their steps with the rising and falling of the platforms. "Patience," he advised. "Observe, anticipate, and act. That's how humans survive in uncertainty." Leora concentrated, timing her steps with care. One miscalculation, and she could have fallen into the depths below. Yet with each successful move, her confidence grew. She began to understand the rhythm of the structure, to predict its subtle shifts and respond instinctively. By late afternoon, they reached the heart of the chamber, a central platform surrounded by glowing crystal towers. At the center stood a device similar to the memory sphere, but larger and more intricate. It pulsed with energy, casting beams of light that intertwined like ribbons across the room. Leora approached cautiously, feeling the vibrations in her chest and fingertips. Cale examined the device from a distance. "This is the core," he said softly. "It stores the knowledge of the civilization, but it's also a test. They left challenges to see who could truly engage with their world." Leora's eyes widened. "A test? What kind of test?" Cale shrugged. "One of intelligence, observation, and courage. This is where humans shine. We learn, we adapt, and we persevere. That's what makes us remarkable." Leora stepped closer, reaching out to touch the surface of the device. Instantly, a wave of light enveloped her, and the room seemed to expand. Images, sounds, and sensations flooded her mind. She saw landscapes of other planets, structures rising and falling, and creatures moving with purpose and intelligence. But then the flow shifted, presenting challenges, puzzles of light, patterns that required synchronization, sequences that demanded observation and reasoning. Leora felt overwhelmed, but Cale's voice reached her through the chaos. "Focus on the patterns, think like a human. Use your mind and intuition." She closed her eyes and concentrated, breaking down the sequences into smaller parts. Step by step, pattern by pattern, she began to solve the challenges. Each success sent a ripple through the room, the light responding with harmony. She realized that the test was not about strength or speed, but about adaptability, intelligence, and courage, all qualities humans had in abundance. Hours passed, though they seemed like minutes. Leora moved through the sequences with growing confidence, her mind attuned to the rhythms and logic of the device. She felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the alien civilization, but to humanity itself. Humans had always faced the unknown, and their survival depended on their ability to learn, adapt, and persevere. Finally, the core responded fully. A beam of light shot into the air, forming a holographic map of the plateau and the surrounding regions. Symbols and pathways highlighted locations of interest, safe passages, and areas rich with resources. Leora and Kale exchanged a look of awe. "This is incredible," Leora whispered. "We can understand their world and learn how to thrive here." Kale nodded. "Humans are explorers. We take what we learn, apply it, and push forward. That's why we endure where others might fail." As they studied the map, a low vibration ran through the chamber. The crystal spires around them began to shift, opening passages to other areas. Leora felt a thrill of anticipation. More mysteries awaited, more knowledge to uncover, more challenges to overcome. The rest of the day was spent mapping the new passages and documenting the sequences they had completed. Leora felt exhausted but exhilarated. The test had pushed her to her limits, but it had also proven something vital. Humans could adapt, learn, and overcome challenges in ways no other species could. As evening fell, they found a sheltered alcove within the chamber to rest. The crystals glowed softly, casting gentle light over their surroundings. Leora leaned against Kale, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced the first real danger of the plateau, navigated shifting floors, floating platforms, and a complex test, and emerged not just unscathed, but stronger and wiser. "You've done well today," Kale said quietly. "You faced fear, uncertainty, and challenge, and you prevailed. That's the essence of humanity. We endure, we learn, we rise." Leora smiled, feeling a surge of pride and determination. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns, but humans had a unique strength: courage, intelligence, and adaptability. She understood now that every challenge was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to prove themselves, not just to survive, but to thrive. As she closed her eyes, the hum of the crystals echoed in her mind, a reminder that the world was alive, responsive, and full of possibilities. She dreamed of the passages yet unexplored, the secrets still hidden, and the knowledge that awaited those brave enough to seek it. The first real test had been conquered, but the journey was far from over. And Leora knew, deep in her heart, that humans were ready for whatever the plateau and the galaxy might throw at them. The crystalline chamber pulsed softly as Leora awoke to the faint glow of morning light refracting through the spires. The previous day's challenges had tested her in ways she had never imagined: floating platforms, shifting floors, and a complex test of intelligence. But now she felt stronger, more confident, and ready for whatever lay ahead. She stretched her stiff muscles, feeling the hum of the crystals vibrating in harmony with her heartbeat. Kale was already moving, carefully inspecting the chamber for any changes overnight. "Morning," he said quietly without looking up. "Today we go deeper. The core has opened pathways we have yet to explore. There's more knowledge, more mysteries waiting for us." Leora rose, tightening the straps of her pack. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Every day on the plateau had pushed her beyond her limits, and yet each challenge had revealed something extraordinary about humans: courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. She had faced fear before, but today she sensed they would confront the ultimate test. They moved cautiously through the chamber, following the paths highlighted by the core's light. The corridors twisted and descended into lower levels of the structure. The air grew cooler and more charged with energy, making Leora's skin tingle. Shadows danced along the walls, cast by the glowing crystals embedded in the floor and ceiling. Each step demanded attention, and Leora kept her senses alert, noting every vibration, every flicker of light. At a junction, they encountered a massive doorway unlike any they had seen before. Its surface was smooth and reflective, with a faint blue glow tracing intricate patterns across it. The doorway seemed alive, responding to their presence, and Leora felt a thrill of anticipation. "This is it," Kale whispered. "The final challenge. Beyond this doorway lies the heart of the civilization's knowledge. It will test us, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well." Leora swallowed hard. "I'm ready. she said, though her voice carried a hint of awe. She had faced fear before, but the weight of history and the unknown made her heart race. Yet beneath it all, she felt that familiar human strength, the courage to step forward despite uncertainty. Together, they touched the surface of the doorway. A low hum resonated through the air, and the patterns on the door shimmered, then slowly parted to reveal a vast chamber beyond. The room was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows, supported by massive crystalline pillars. At the center, a series of devices floated in the air, connected by ribbons of light that pulsed rhythmically. The entire space seemed alive, a network of energy, memory, and intelligence intertwined. Leora stepped forward, marveling at the sight. She could feel the energy vibrating in her chest and fingertips, a tangible connection to the civilization that had created this place. Kale followed closely, his eyes scanning the chamber for potential dangers, but also for opportunities to learn. At the center of the room floated the largest device they had yet seen, a crystalline sphere larger than either of them, pulsing with a deep, steady light. Leora felt a magnetic pull toward it, as if it were calling her. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and touched the surface. Instantly, a wave of images, sounds, and sensations flooded her mind. She saw the civilization in its prime. Cities rising from the ground, creatures interacting with the glowing flora, and devices harnessing energy from the planet itself. But then the vision shifted. Challenges appeared, complex sequences of light and energy, patterns that demanded focus, reasoning, and coordination. It was a test, but one that went beyond the puzzles they had encountered before. Leora felt overwhelmed, but Kale's voice anchored her. "Think like a human," he said. "Observe, adapt, and persevere. That's how we overcome the unknown." She took a deep breath, breaking the sequences into smaller, manageable steps. Each success sent a ripple through the room, the light responding in harmony. She realized that the device was not just a test. It was a teacher, guiding them to understand the civilization's knowledge and the deeper principles that had allowed it to thrive. Hours passed, though they felt like minutes. Leora moved through the sequences with growing confidence, her mind attuned to the rhythms of the chamber. She discovered principles of energy manipulation, environmental balance, and logical problem-solving that were astonishingly advanced, yet intuitively understandable to humans. Every insight felt like a victory, a confirmation of humanity's potential. Finally, the chamber responded fully. Beams of light connected all the floating devices, converging on the central sphere. A holographic projection expanded, showing the plateau, the surrounding valleys, and the distant stars. Symbols and pathways highlighted locations of interest, resources, and safe passages, as well as areas that required caution. Leora and Kale exchanged a look of awe. "This is incredible," Leora whispered. "We can understand their world and learn how to survive and thrive here." Kale nodded. "Humans are explorers. We take what we learn, adapt, and apply it. That's why we endure where others might fail." As they studied the projection, the room began to shift. Pathways opened to previously hidden sections of the structure, inviting them to explore further. Leora felt a thrill of anticipation. More secrets awaited, more knowledge to uncover, and more challenges to overcome. They moved through the new passages, encountering additional devices, each offering insights into the civilization's understanding of the planet and its energy systems. Leora felt a growing sense of respect and humility. These beings had achieved remarkable things, yet the human spirit was no less capable. Humans had survived in countless environments, adapted to countless challenges, and now they were learning from a civilization that had understood a world far different from Earth. As they progressed, they came to a chamber filled with flowing streams of luminescent liquid. Strange plants grew along the banks, their petals reflecting light like tiny prisms. The air was thick with energy, and Leora could feel the subtle pull of the planet's power. She realized that the civilization had not only understood energy but had integrated themselves into the natural rhythm of the planet, achieving harmony and balance. "This is remarkable," Leora whispered. They lived in complete harmony with their world. "Humans could learn from this," Kale observed quietly. "And we will. Curiosity, intelligence, adaptability, these are human strengths. We take knowledge, apply it, and survive. That's why we thrive where others might falter." As the day wore on, they explored deeper chambers, discovering more devices and holographic records. Leora marveled at the intricacy and intelligence displayed, feeling a sense of pride for humanity. They had survived on Earth, adapted to countless challenges, and now they were capable of understanding worlds far beyond their own. Evening fell, and they found a safe corner within one of the larger chambers to rest. The crystals glowed softly, casting gentle light over their surroundings. Leora leaned against Kale, exhausted but exhilarated. Today had been the culmination of all they had learned, the ultimate challenge of the plateau, and they had succeeded. "You've done extraordinarily well," Kale said quietly. "You've faced fear, uncertainty, and challenge, and you've prevailed. That's the essence of humanity. We endure, we learn, and we rise." Leora smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had unlocked knowledge, faced the ultimate test, and emerged stronger and wiser. She understood now that every challenge was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to prove themselves, not just to survive, but to thrive. As she closed her eyes, the hum of the crystals echoed in her mind, a reminder that the world was alive, responsive, and full of possibilities. She dreamed of the passages yet unexplored, the secrets still hidden, and the knowledge that awaited those brave enough to seek it. The next morning, Leora and Kale ascended from the depths of the structure, carrying their documentation and newfound understanding. The plateau stretched before them, vast and mysterious, yet no longer intimidating. They had conquered the challenges of the structure, learned from the alien civilization, and proven that human courage, intelligence, and adaptability could thrive even in the most alien environments. As they reached the edge of the plateau, the sun rising over the distant valleys, Leora felt a profound sense of connection, not just to the planet or the civilization they had studied, but to humanity itself. Humans were explorers, learners, and survivors. They faced the unknown, adapted, and persevered. That was the essence of their existence, and it was a strength no challenge could diminish. Kale turned to her, a smile on his face. "The plateau has given us much, but it has also shown us what humans are capable of. Remember this, Leora, curiosity, courage, and intelligence, those are our greatest tools, and they will guide us through whatever the galaxy throws at us next." Leora nodded, her heart full. She had faced fear, navigated unknown worlds, solved complex challenges, and uncovered knowledge that no human had yet seen. She understood now that the journey was never just about survival. It was about growth, understanding, and the courage to step forward into the unknown. As they descended toward the plains of Exura 7, the wind carrying the familiar scent of iron-rich soil, Leora felt a sense of triumph that went beyond personal achievement. It was the triumph of humanity, the ability to endure, learn, and rise above challenges, no matter how alien or daunting. And as the plateau receded behind them, Leora knew one undeniable truth: humans were not just survivors. They were explorers, innovators, and pioneers, capable of facing any unknown, conquering it, and leaving a mark on the universe. The journey had been long, difficult, and at times frightening, but it had proven one thing beyond all doubt: humanity could rise to any challenge, adapt to any world, and thrive where no one else could. And with that knowledge, Leora looked toward the horizon, ready for the next adventure, knowing that humans had the courage, intelligence, and determination to shape their own destiny among the stars.